Captain Laura Bennett knew something was wrong the moment the sensors on the USS Horizon started to flicker. They were on a routine patrol near Saturn's rings, the ice and dust creating a beautiful backdrop against the darkness of space. But beauty could hide danger, and today, it did. "Status report," Laura called out, her voice steady despite the unease growing in her stomach. Lieutenant Jack Freeman looked up from his engineering station, his face pale in the blue glow of the monitors. "Power fluctuations across all systems. Captain, something's interfering with our energy grid." Laura stood from her command chair, moving to the main view screen. The USS Horizon was not a large vessel, but it was one of Earth's most advanced scout ships. With a crew of 42, they had been tasked with monitoring the outer planets for any sign of Xyrillian activity. The reptilian aliens had been at war with Earth for 3 years now, a conflict that had started over disputed mining rights in the Kuiper Belt and had quickly escalated. "Scan the rings. They could be hiding in there," Laura ordered. Communications Officer Eric Taylor shook his head. "Scanners are compromised, Captain. I'm barely keeping communication systems online." Visual confirmation of 3 Xyrillian vessels, emerging from the rings, called out pilot Samantha Green. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, trying to adjust their position. "They're in attack formation." Laura felt her heart race but kept her expression neutral. Her crew depended on her calm. "Evasive maneuvers. Prepare defensive systems." The ship lurched as Samantha tried to turn them away from the approaching threat. The Horizon was fast, but with their systems being interfered with, it moved like it was swimming through molasses. "They're using something new," Jack said, his eyes darting between readouts. "Some kind of energy dampening field. I've never seen anything like it." A bright purple beam shot across space, connecting with the Horizon's hull. The ship shuddered violently. "Direct hit to our engine section," Security Chief Ryan Kelly reported from Tactical. "Propulsion is down. We're dead in space." Laura gripped the edge of a console as the artificial gravity wavered. "Reroute emergency power to shields and weapons. We're not going down without a fight." Dr. Olivia Martinez, the ship's science officer, looked up from her station with wide eyes. "Captain, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures. They're not trying to destroy us." She paused, rechecking her readings. "I think they want to capture us." As if confirming her words, the largest of the Xyrillian ships moved closer, extending mechanical arms that reached for the disabled Horizon. "All hands, prepare for potential boarding," Laura announced over the ship-wide comm. "This is not a drill. Security teams to airlocks and vulnerable points." Ryan was already moving, organizing his security personnel through his communicator. "We've got 14 trained officers, including myself. Standard weapons only." The first boom echoed through the ship as the Xyrillians attached to their hull. Then came the hissing sound of cutting tools. "They're coming through airlock 3, Ryan reported, his voice tense over the comm. Laura made the hardest decision of her career. "All hands. This is the captain. Stand down." She heard gasps around her. "I repeat, stand down. We are outmatched and disabled. I will not sacrifice this crew in a futile battle." The bridge crew stared at her, shock on their faces. "Our priority now is survival," Laura continued. "We gather intelligence. We stay alive. We find a way home." The first Xyrillians entered the bridge 10 minutes later. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, their scaled bodies gleaming under the emergency lights. 4 arms allowed them to hold weapons while still having limbs free to operate equipment. Their faces were elongated with slitted eyes that glowed a faint yellow. One stepped forward, clearly the leader. A device on its chest lit up as it spoke, translating its hissing language into English. "Humans," it said, the translation sounding artificial and cold. "Your species has been a particular nuisance. You will make excellent subjects for our newest facility." Laura stood tall despite being a foot shorter than the alien. "I am Captain Laura Bennett of the United Earth Forces. My crew and I are military personnel and demand to be treated according to the Galactic Conventions on Warfare." The Xyrillian made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your Earth is not recognized by the Galactic Confederation. You have no standing. You are simply specimens now." The aliens moved efficiently, placing restraints on each crew member. The devices were unlike anything Laura had seen before. They seemed to mold themselves to human wrists, adjusting until they were secure but not painful. "Where are you taking us?" Laura demanded as they were led from the bridge. "To the vault," the Xyrillian commander replied. "The most secure detention facility in the known galaxy. No one has ever escaped. No one ever will." The crew was marched to a transport shuttle attached to their airlock. As they passed through the ship, Laura tried to memorize what she could see of the Xyrillian technology. It might be useful later. Once aboard the alien shuttle, they were secured into seats designed for bodies different from their own. The restraints adjusted again, holding them firmly. Dr. Martinez leaned close to Laura, whispering, "These restraints respond to our unique physiology. Fascinating technology." "Save your observations, Doctor," Laura whispered back. "We'll need them." The shuttle detached from the horizon with a jolt. Through a small viewport, Laura watched her ship grow smaller, floating disabled among Saturn's rings. The Xyrillians had attached some kind of device to it, probably to track any rescue attempts. The journey lasted several hours. The humans were given no food or water. Those sensors in the walls seemed to be monitoring their vital signs. Finally, they approached what looked like an asteroid, but its surface was too regular, too designed. As they got closer, Laura could see sections of it gleaming with artificial structures. Docking ports dotted one side, with ships of various designs coming and going. "Welcome to the vault," the Xyrillian commander announced as they prepared to dock. "Your new permanent home." Lieutenant Jack Freeman, who was secured to a seat near Laura, caught her eye. His face showed determination rather than fear. "They've clearly never imprisoned humans before," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Laura gave him the smallest nod. Already her mind was working, evaluating, planning. The Xyrillians believed their prison was unbreakable because no one had ever broken out before. But humans specialized in doing the impossible. "Stay alert," she murmured to those nearest her. "Observe everything, we won't be here long." The shuttle docked with a gentle bump. As the doors opened and the aliens moved to escort them out, Laura took a deep breath. This wasn't the end of their mission. It was just the beginning of a new one. Operation Breakout was already forming in her mind. The vault was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. As the crew of the USS Horizon was marched from the docking bay, they entered a massive hollowed-out asteroid. The ceiling rose hundreds of feet above them, carved smooth and lined with strange glowing panels that provided light. The air smelled sterile, with an underlying scent like copper and ozone. "Keep moving," growled one of the Xyrillian guards, prodding Laura with what looked like a shock baton. Laura took in everything as they walked. The main corridor was wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side. Various alien species in guard, uniforms patrolled or stood at checkpoints. Some looked almost human, while others were completely foreign. Beings made of what appeared to be living crystal or floating gas clouds contained in mechanical suits. At least 50 different species. "Working here," whispered Dr. Olivia Martinez as she walked beside Laura. "The Xyrillians must have a vast empire, or many allies." Laura replied quietly. They were led to a large circular room with numerous doorways leading off it. A Xyrillian in an elaborate uniform stood on a raised platform in the center. Its scales were a deeper red than the others, with gold patterns that probably indicated high rank. "Processing begins now," announced the Xyrillian. "You will be cataloged, decontaminated, and assigned to appropriate containment based on your biology." One by one, the humans were called forward. Each was scanned by devices that hummed and clicked, taking readings of their bodies. Guards asked questions about their dietary needs and physical requirements, which Laura found interesting. The vault apparently kept its prisoners alive and somewhat healthy, though she doubted it was out of compassion. When it was Security Chief Ryan Kelly's turn, he deliberately flexed his muscles as he was scanned. The guard operating the device made a note on a tablet. "Higher muscle density than the others," the guard said to a supervisor. "Mark for additional restraints." Ryan caught Laura's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. He was gathering information. 2. After processing, the crew was separated into groups. Laura tried to protest, but a guard activated something on her restraints that sent a mild shock through her body. Silence, human. You have no authority here. Laura was placed with 11 others, including Jack Freeman and Olivia Martinez. The rest of her crew was led away through different doors. She memorized which groups went where, mentally mapping the facility as best she could. Their group was marched down a long corridor with transparent cells on either side. Laura was shocked to see dozens of different alien species inside. Some paced their cells like caged animals. Others sat motionless, as if they had given up long ago. A few pressed against the transparent walls, watching the new arrivals with curious eyes. The human sector is new, said their guard as they walked. Constructed specifically in anticipation of capturing your kind. You plan to take prisoners from Earth? Laura asked, ignoring the risk of another shock. The guard made a clicking sound that might have been amusement. The Zerillian Empire always plans ahead. We studied your atmosphere, gravity, and biological needs. This sector is set to Earth normal gravity, but with temperature and humidity levels calculated to cause discomfort without harming you. Sure enough, Laura had already noticed the air felt thick and slightly cool, around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, she guessed. Uncomfortable, especially in their thin uniform jumpsuits, but not dangerous. Their cells were small, about 8 feet by 10 feet, with a simple bed platform, a toilet unit, and a small sink. The front wall was completely transparent, allowing guards to observe them at all times. Each human was placed in an individual cell. When the guard reached Laura's cell, last in the line, he paused. The captain, he said, reading something on his device. You will be isolated from your crew as much as possible. Laura was led past the row of cells where her companions had been placed and taken to a separate block around a corner. Her cell was identical to the others, but she could no longer see any of her crew. She could, however, see aliens in cells across the corridor, beings with tentacles, fur, and strange anatomies she couldn't begin to understand. Once the guards left, Laura waited several minutes to make sure they weren't observing her closely. Then she inspected every inch of her cell. The bed was attached to the floor and wall. The toilet and sink were similarly fixed in place. The transparent wall appeared to be some kind of energy field rather than solid material. It shimmered slightly when she got close. Laura noticed a small vent near the floor that seemed to be for air circulation. It was barely 6 inches wide, too small for even a child to fit through. But what caught her attention was that it seemed to connect to the cell next to hers. She lay down on the floor next to the vent, pretending to rest while actually examining it. Yes, it definitely connected to the neighboring cells as part of the ventilation system. Laura tapped gently on the metal around the vent. 3 quick taps, then 2 slow ones. For a moment, there was silence. Then came a response. 3 quick taps, 2 slow ones. Laura smiled. Someone in the next cell understood. Old Earth naval communication codes were coming in handy already. Before she could try more complex communication, a chime sounded throughout the facility. The energy field at the front of her cell shimmered and became more transparent. Exercise period, announced a voice over a speaker system. All prisoners in Block H prepare for exercise period. 2 guards appeared outside Laura's cell. The field deactivated, and they gestured for her to come out. Her restraints were still in place, limiting her arm movements, but she could walk freely. In a large open area at the end of the corridor, Laura found some of her crew mixed with alien prisoners. Jack Freeman was there, as was Olivia Martinez. They were careful not to show too much familiarity, but Jack managed to position himself near Laura as they were instructed to walk around the perimeter of the room. Water pipes run through the walls between cells, Jack whispered as they walked. I can hear them. If we tap on them, the sound travels. Laura nodded slightly. Start mapping everything you can. Note guard rotations, any weaknesses in the fields. Already on it, Jack replied. These aliens are overconfident. They think their tech makes this place unbreakable. Across the room, Olivia was speaking with a tall, thin alien with pale blue skin. The alien seemed surprised that Olivia was speaking to it. Most prisoners kept to their own species. 1 hour per day for exercise. Jack continued quietly as they walked. 3. Meals. The guards change shifts every 6 hours. I've counted at least 4 different species working as guards, plus automated drones for routine tasks. Any sign of the rest of our crew? Laura asked. Ryan is in Block J. He managed to signal during mealtime. He's getting info from other prisoners. Some have been here for decades. A guard looked their way and they fell silent. But Laura's mind was racing, just hours into their imprisonment, and already they were establishing communication and gathering intelligence. Later, back in her cell, Laura lay on her bed thinking. The Xerillians had made a fundamental error. They had built an unbreakable prison based on superior technology and believed that was enough. But they didn't understand humans, especially humans trained for space missions, where adaptability and problem-solving were essential skills. She heard a faint tapping from the pipes in her wall. Using her fingernail, she tapped back, sending a simple message, plan forming. The response came quickly. Ready when you are. Laura smiled in the dim light of her cell. The Xerillians thought they had captured specimens for study. Instead, they had brought together a crew of Earth's best problem solvers and given them a puzzle to solve, and humans loved proving the impossible was possible. Laura woke to the sound of the meal chime. She had been in the vault for less than 24 hours, but already she had developed a deep understanding of how the prison operated. The Xerillians relied heavily on routine and technology, which made their patterns predictable, and predictable meant exploitable. The energy field at the front of her cell shimmered, and a small opening appeared. A drone, a floating metal sphere with extending arms, delivered a tray of food. The meal was a gray paste with what looked like purple vegetables on the side. It smelled bland but not unpleasant. Laura took the tray and nodded at the drone, which moved on to the next cell. She had noticed that the drone seemed to respond to basic politeness, perhaps programmed to avoid conflict with prisoners. Another piece of useful information. As she ate, Laura reviewed what she had learned through the tapping communication network that had spread throughout the human prisoners overnight. Jack had discovered that the energy fields flickered slightly during shift changes when power was briefly redirected. Olivia had befriended several alien prisoners and learned more about the vault's history and layout. Ryan had been testing the limits of the restraints they all wore, finding that they had some give when moved in certain ways. Most importantly, they had confirmed that all 42 crew members were accounted for and part of the communication network. No one had been taken away for experimentation or interrogation, which was a relief. After breakfast, the chime sounded again for the morning exercise period. This time, when Laura was led to the exercise area, she saw more of her crew had been brought together. The Xerillians seemed to believe that mixing prisoners from different blocks during exercise was safe, because of the restraints and guard presence. Laura walked the perimeter of the room, carefully timing her pace to bring her near different crew members. Medical Officer Heather Brooks approached as they passed each other. "Captain," she said quietly, "I've been observing how the restraints react to our bodies. They adjust based on our individual physiologies." "Is that useful?" Laura asked, keeping her voice low. Heather nodded slightly. "Very. These were designed for beings with different joint structures. Our wrists are more flexible than the Xerillians accounted for. With enough pressure applied at the right angle, I think they could slip off." Laura resisted the urge to smile. "Excellent work. Pass that information along." Next, she crossed paths with Communications Officer Eric Taylor, who had been placed in a block with several talkative aliens. "I've been listening to the guards," Eric murmured. "Their language isn't that complex once you recognize the patterns. I can understand about 30% of what they're saying without the translators." "Anything useful?" Laura asked. "They're preparing for an inspection tomorrow. Some high-ranking official is coming to see the human specimens." Eric glanced around to make sure no guards were watching them too closely. "Security will be focused on the inspection route. Might create an opportunity." Laura nodded thoughtfully. Keep listening. By the time exercise period ended, Laura had spoken briefly with 8 crew members and received updates on their observations. When she returned to her cell, she began piecing together all the information into a coherent plan. The midday meal came and went. Laura noticed that the nutrition paste seemed designed to provide all necessary calories and nutrients while being completely unmemorable. The Xerillians clearly saw food as fuel, not comfort. During the afternoon, Laura continued her own observations. She noted that the guard patrols passed her cell exactly every 18 minutes. The drones followed different routes, servicing the environmental systems on a 30-minute cycle. Between these rotations, there were brief periods where her cell was not directly observed. Laura used one of these gaps to test what Heather had told her about the restraints. She twisted her wrists in opposite directions while pulling them apart at a specific angle. The restraints tightened at first, then suddenly gave a little slack. Not enough to remove them yet. But Heather was right. There was a flaw in their design. The afternoon exercise period brought another opportunity to exchange information. This time, Laura managed to speak with Lieutenant Jack Freeman for almost a full minute as they walked. The energy barriers are controlled from a central hub, Jack told her. But each cell block also has a local control node. I spotted one during transport to exercise, a panel about 5 feet up on the wall marked with Xerillian symbols. Could you disable it? Laura asked. Jack's eyes lit up. With the right tools, absolutely. The panel casing is secured with standard fasteners. Their technology is advanced, but the basic engineering principles are universal. What tools would you need? Something conductive to interrupt the power flow, and something narrow and rigid to trigger the manual release. Laura nodded. I'll spread the word. Everyone should be looking for potential tools. As the afternoon wore on, the communication network buzzed with activity. Using the tapping code through water pipes and vents, the crew shared discoveries and ideas. By the time the evening meal arrived, they had the beginnings of a plan. After the meal, during a brief supervision gap, Laura received a complex series of taps from the neighboring cell. It was Pilot Samantha Green, who had discovered something interesting about the food. The purple vegetable contains compounds that cause mild fever in humans. Laura translated to herself as she decoded the message. Not dangerous, but enough to trigger medical attention. This could be useful. The Xerillians seemed committed to keeping their prisoners alive and relatively healthy. A medical emergency might create the distraction they needed. The final exercise period of the day brought Laura face to face with Dr. Olivia Martinez, who had spent her time analyzing the alien technology they had observed. Their systems are impressive but logical, Olivia whispered as they passed each other. I've been watching how they interact with the control panels. The interface responds to both touch and their bioelectric signatures. But I think I could operate. If I could get close enough. How close? Laura asked. Very. But if we created a distraction? Laura nodded. We're working on that. As the lights dimmed for the sleep cycle, Laura lay on her bed and mentally reviewed all the information they had gathered. In less than a day, they had identified weaknesses in the restraints, mapped guard rotations, discovered potential tools, found a way to create a medical distraction, and located control panels that could potentially be hacked. The Xerillians had built what they considered an unbreakable prison, but they had made one critical mistake. They had imprisoned humans without understanding what that meant. Humans who were trained to work together to solve problems, to adapt to hostile environments. Humans who refused to accept that anything was truly impossible. Through the pipes came a final message for the day, relayed from crew member to crew member until it reached everyone. Operation Breakout begins at 0300. Laura tapped her acknowledgement and closed her eyes. She would need rest for what was coming. Tomorrow they would make history as the first and likely last beings to escape from the vault, and the Xerillians would learn an important lesson about underestimating humans. Laura woke at what she estimated was 0245 hours. The vault was quiet during the sleep cycle, with minimal guard presence and only essential systems running at full power. Perfect conditions for Operation Breakout. She sat up on her bed and began the process Heather had discovered for removing the restraints. It took nearly 10 minutes of careful manipulation, applying pressure at specific angles while gradually twisting her wrists. Finally, with a soft click, the restraints loosened enough for her to slip her hands free. Laura allowed herself a brief moment of triumph before moving to the next step. She retrieved the small metal pieces she had carefully removed from her bed frame while pretending to sleep earlier. The Xyrillians had built the beds to be solid and unbreakable, but the humans had quickly discovered that the metal junction pieces could be worked loose with enough persistence. At exactly 0300, Laura heard the faint sound of tapping through the pipes, the signal that Operation Breakout was commencing. Across different cell blocks, her crew would now be executing their assigned tasks. In Block J, Security Chief Ryan Kelly would be organizing a distraction. In Block F, Pilot Samantha Green would be initiating the medical emergency plan, and if everything went according to plan, Lieutenant Jack Freeman would soon be working on bypassing the energy barrier controls. Laura knelt by her cell's small ventilation duct and removed the cover using the metal pieces she had salvaged. The duct was too small for even a child to crawl through, but it was perfect for passing items. She reached into the duct, feeling around until her fingers touched something. A bundle of thin wires that Olivia had managed to collect from a maintenance drone. Now equipped with both the metal tools and wires, Laura moved to the front of her cell and examined the energy barrier. Jack had explained that the barriers operated on a circuit that could be disrupted if accessed correctly. The key was timing. Laura waited, counting down the seconds until the guard patrol passed her cell. Once they were gone, she had approximately 18 minutes until the next patrol. The drone service cycle would bring a maintenance drone by in about 8 minutes. When the patrol passed, Laura moved quickly. She inserted one of the metal pieces into a nearly invisible seam at the edge of the energy barrier. The barrier hummed and crackled, but didn't deactivate. Laura worked the metal piece deeper, searching for the junction point Jack had described. Across the corridor, an alien prisoner with 4 eyes watched her curiously, but made no sound to alert the guards. The alien had been in the cell for what translated to 15 years. Perhaps it was curious, or perhaps it enjoyed seeing the system being challenged. Laura found the junction point and carefully inserted one of the wires. The barrier flickered but remained active. She needed more power disruption. Carefully, she added a second wire, creating a short circuit. The energy barrier sputtered, flickered, and suddenly deactivated with a soft hiss. Laura stepped through, quickly, then used another wire to reactivate the barrier from the outside. To casual observation, her cell would appear occupied and secure. Now in the corridor, Laura pressed herself against the wall and listened. In the distance, she could hear commotion. Ryan's distraction was working. She moved silently toward the local control node Jack had identified. As she approached the junction where her corridor met the main hallway, a maintenance drone floated past. Laura froze, pressing herself into a shadowed alcove. The drone paused, its sensors sweeping the area. Laura held her breath, remaining perfectly still. After what seemed like an eternity, the drone continued on its programmed path. Laura exhaled slowly and continued toward the control node. When she reached it, she found the panel exactly where Jack had described, 5 feet up the wall, marked with Xyrillian symbols. Laura worked quickly, using her salvaged tools to remove the panel cover. Inside was a complex array of circuitry that would have baffled most humans, but Laura had been well briefed by Jack and Olivia. She identified the primary control circuit and was about to disconnect it when she heard voices approaching. Guards, speaking in the harsh consonants of the Xyrillian language. Laura replaced the panel cover and looked for somewhere to hide. There was nowhere. Just as the guards were about to turn the corner, alarms blared throughout the facility. The medical emergency distraction had begun. The guards hurried past Laura's position, heading toward the commotion in Block F where Samantha Green would be exhibiting symptoms of a dangerous fever. Laura returned to the panel and removed the cover again. This time she worked even faster, disconnecting the primary circuit and rerouting the secondary controls. The panel lights flickered, then changed from blue to green. If Jack was right, this meant all the energy barriers in this block had switched to backup power. a less stable configuration that would be easier to disrupt. Laura replaced the panel cover and moved quickly down the corridor, staying close to the wall. She reached Block H, where several of her crew were held, just as their energy barriers began to flicker and fail. Jack Freeman emerged from his cell, grinning. "Told you it would work," he said. "The backup power system can't maintain full integrity." "Good work," Laura replied. "Now for Phase 2. 6 more crew members joined them in the corridor. All had removed their restraints using Heather's technique. Laura quickly organized them into 2 teams. "Jack, take Johnson and Patel to the main control hub. Olivia should already be working her way there from Block D. The rest of you come with me to secure transportation." As they prepared to move out, one of the aliens in a nearby cell called out to them in halting English. "You escape?" the alien asked, its voice raspy and strange. "Impossible. Nobody escapes the vault." Laura paused and looked at the alien. "Watch us." The alien made a gesture that might have been respect. "If you succeed, perhaps take others." Laura hadn't considered this. The plan was focused on getting her crew out. But the idea of liberating other prisoners who had been unjustly confined had a certain appeal. "We'll see," she said. "If we can." The team split up, moving carefully through the corridors. The medical emergency in Block F had drawn most of the guards and medical drones to that area. Meanwhile, the disturbance Ryan had organized in Block J was keeping another contingent of guards busy. Laura's team encountered a lone Xerillian guard near the intersection leading to the docking bay. Before the guard could raise an alarm, Security Officer William Cole, who had been a martial arts instructor on Earth, moved with surprising speed. He struck the guard at a point where the neck scales were thinnest, and the Xerillian dropped unconscious. "Nice move," Laura said as they dragged the guard into an empty storage room. William shrugged. "I've been studying their physiology during exercise periods. They look tough, but they have vulnerable points just like us." The team continued toward the docking bay. According to the information gathered by Eric Taylor, there should be several transport shuttles kept ready for emergency evacuations. If they could secure one, they would have their escape vehicle. As they approached the docking bay doors, Laura's communicator, a small device Olivia had assembled from parts taken from the maintenance drones, crackled to life. "Captain, this is Jack. We've reached the control hub. Olivia is working on the systems now. We should have control of the internal doors and communications in about 3 minutes." "Good," Laura replied quietly. "We're at the docking bay, standing by for your signal." Laura looked at her small team. 4 humans preparing to do what no species had ever done before, escape from the vault. But they weren't just 4 humans. They were part of a coordinated effort by 42 trained professionals, all working together toward a common goal. That was what the Xerillians had failed to understand about humans. They weren't just adaptable as individuals. They were exponentially more powerful as a group. The communicator crackled again. "Captain, we're in. Doors opening in 3, 2, 1. The massive docking bay doors slid open before them. Beyond lay their route to freedom. The docking bay was massive with high ceilings and a dozen landing pads. 3 transport shuttles sat ready, their sleek designs unlike anything Laura had seen before. Her team moved quickly toward the nearest one, staying low and using cargo containers for cover. "No guards," whispered William Cole, scanning the area. "Too easy." "They never expected anyone to get this far," Laura replied. "Complacency is our advantage." A soft beep came from her makeshift communicator. "Captain, this is Olivia. We've accessed their main systems. I can see everything happening in the vault right now. The Xerillians are confused. They're responding to multiple emergencies and haven't realized it's a coordinated escape yet." "Good work," Laura said. "What about the rest of our crew?" "Ryan is leading 23 crew members toward the docking bay now. They should arrive in approximately 3 minutes. Samantha's medical distraction worked perfectly. She's no longer pretending to be sick and is on her way with 6 others." Laura felt pride swell in her chest. Her crew was performing brilliantly under pressure. "And what about you and Jack?" "We're staying at the control hub," Jack cut in. We can do more good here, keeping the Xerillians locked out of their own systems. Laura didn't like leaving anyone behind, but she understood the tactical necessity. Understood. We'll come back for you. William touched Laura's arm, pointing toward the nearest shuttle. Captain, look. 2 Xerillian technicians were performing maintenance on the shuttle, oblivious to the chaos elsewhere in the vault. William looked at Laura, silently asking for orders. Laura considered their options. They needed that shuttle, but she preferred to avoid unnecessary violence. Let's try talking first, she decided. They approached the shuttle openly. The technicians looked up in surprise, reaching for communication devices. We need your shuttle, Laura said calmly. No one needs to get hurt. The taller Xerillian hissed something that the translation device rendered as impossible. No prisoner escapes the vault. We're making the impossible possible today, Laura replied. Please step aside. The Xerillians looked at each other, then back at the humans. Laura could see them assessing the situation. 4 escaped prisoners, against 2 maintenance workers, not good odds. After a moment, they stepped back. Wise choice, Laura said. William, secure them. William used strips of material torn from his uniform to bind the Xerillians' forearms, while Eric Taylor examined the shuttle's control systems. It's not too different from our own ships, Eric reported. I can fly this. More humans began arriving. At the docking bay, first Ryan's group, then Samantha's. In less than 15 minutes, 40 crew members had gathered. Only Jack and Olivia remained at the control hub. Laura did a quick head count. Everyone onto the shuttle. Eric, prepare for immediate departure. As the crew boarded, Laura's communicator crackled with static. Captain, we have a problem. Jack's voice came through urgently. The Xerillians have figured out what's happening. They're overriding our control of the main docking bay doors. We can hold them off for maybe 2 minutes, then they'll seal everything. Laura turned to Eric, who was already settling into the pilot seat. You heard that. We need to launch now. What about Jack and Olivia? Ryan asked. Laura's face showed her inner conflict. They knew the risks, but we're not leaving them behind. She turned to Samantha. Take a team of 4. Get to the control hub and extract our people. We'll hold the docking bay as long as we can. Samantha nodded and quickly selected 4 security officers. They disembarked and sprinted toward the exit. The rest of you, secure this area, Laura ordered. Anything that can be used as a barrier or weapon, grab it. We need to hold this position for Samantha's team. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, creating barricades from cargo containers and arming themselves with tools and equipment found in the docking bay. Laura took a moment to examine the bound Xerillian technicians. Your species made a fundamental error, she told them. You built an unbreakable prison, but you didn't understand who you were imprisoning. The shorter technician seemed genuinely curious. Why can humans do what no other species has done? Laura considered the question. Because we don't accept limitations, and because we work together in ways you haven't imagined. Before the conversation could continue, alarms blared throughout the docking bay. Red lights flashed and an announcement in multiple languages warned of a security breach. They're coming, Ryan reported from his position near the entrance. I can hear them. Laura joined him at the barricade. Through the corridor, she could see a squad of Xerillian guards approaching, armed with what looked like energy weapons. The humans tensed, ready to defend their position. Just as the guards came into range, the lights in the corridor went out. Confused shouts echoed down the hallway. Jack and Olivia, Laura realized, smiling. They're still helping us. While the guards were disoriented, Samantha's team appeared from a side corridor, moving fast. Behind them came Jack and Olivia, grinning triumphantly. Sorry we're late, Jack called as they reached the barricade. Had to leave them a little surprise in their systems. They won't be able to use their own computers for at least a day. Brilliant work, Laura said. Now let's get out of here. The expanded team rushed to the shuttle where Eric had the engines humming with power. As they boarded, the docking bay doors began to close slowly. Everyone hold on, Eric called from the pilot's seat. This is going to be close. The shuttle lifted off, hovering momentarily as its systems engaged. The docking bay doors continued to close, the opening shrinking with each passing second. Now or never, Laura said, strapping herself into the co-pilot's seat. Eric pushed the shuttle forward, accelerating toward the narrowing gap. The vessel shuddered as its outer hull scraped against the closing doors. For a heart-stopping moment, Laura thought they might not make it. Then they were through, bursting into open space beyond the vault. A cheer went up from the crew. Eric banked the shuttle hard, putting the vault behind them. On the view screen, they could see other vessels scrambling to pursue, but they had a significant head start. Setting course for the nearest neutral space station, Eric reported. We should be able to contact Earth forces from there. Laura nodded, then stood to address her crew. What you've accomplished today is unprecedented. You've done what no species has ever done before, escape from the vault in less than 1 day. She smiled. But we did more than just escape. We proved something important. That humans are stubborn? Jack offered with a grin. That no prison is truly unbreakable, Ryan suggested. Laura shook her head. We proved that the greatest strength isn't technology or physical power. It's cooperation, adaptation, and refusing to accept limitations. She looked around at the faces of her crew. That's what makes humans different, and that's what the Xerillians and every other species need to understand about us. As the shuttle accelerated away from the vault, Laura knew that their escape would send shockwaves through the galaxy. The unbreakable prison had been broken in less than a day, and by a species that many considered primitive compared to the spacefaring civilizations that had existed for millennia. The legend of the humans who escaped the vault would spread, and perhaps, just perhaps, it would make their enemies think twice before underestimating humanity again. On the shuttle's communication system, they intercepted a Xerillian transmission. The translation was clear and contained a new standing order. Never capture humans, the cost is too high. Laura smiled. Lesson learned.